chat in the room. Got it. Okay. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the introduction to outreach. What is outreach? I'll do that demo that I talked about. And then I want to talk about ways in which Clarity can collect location data and how all of that can get related back to your map. And then if we have time, we can talk about some configuration options and reporting. But let's get into it. What is Clarity Outreach? It is first and foremost a fully integrated and map-based tool that is connected to your HMIS, which is really incredible. I've worked with a lot of communities that use external tools like ArcGIS or Survey123, but those are external tools to HMIS, and that information doesn't get integrated. What's so amazing about this platform is that it is fully connected, and what you do on one side can be reflected on the other and vice versa. And I'll show you several of the ways that that integration occurs. And so that is really groundbreaking for an HMIS system to have that level of connectivity to a mapping tool. It is a very flexible tool for viewing client and encampment geospatial data. It can help you get a landscape of your community and of unsheltered homelessness. It is highly customizable to meet your needs and your workflows. We'll talk about some of that customization and some of the things that you may want to explore further. And really, this tool was designed with you all in mind. It's designed to help enhance coordination in the field and really drive your outreach initiatives so that you make progress in ending unsheltered homelessness. We've got loads of tools that are built in here, and I'm going to showcase some of my favorite ones for you today. And then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, it is going to be mobile friendly. And I know that because I was the primary tester of this tool, and I spent 6 months testing the product before it rolled out. And I did majority of that testing from my cell phone. And so I've worked with many communities that are using this tool in the field and can assure you that it is very mobile friendly, and that can be used on a cell phone or a tablet or whatever device you all may be using in the field. So that's the intro to it. We're going to dive into the demo now because the best way to understand it is to see it in action. And today I'm going to be covering the navigation and the data filters, so just the basic interface with you. I'll show you the encampment workflow and the individual workflow. We'll talk about those communication tools, the integrations, as well as the configuration options. So let's go ahead and turn into Clarity. You all don't yet have access to Clarity in your system. We are working on getting that connected so that you have access, but when it's available to you, you'll navigate to your navigation pane and you'll select Outreach, and that will drive you directly into the module. And so today I'm going to be using a test environment in my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, which is where I'm currently located. And you can see I've got some test data that's been populated in here, but this is the basic interface of your map. It's going to look the same way from your mobile device, very much like a Google Map or an Apple Maps if you're familiar with those softwares. I do want to point out a few pieces of the interface. Up at the top right-hand corner, you've got your control panels. If you have any alerts and notes within your system, those will always generate there for you at login, and I'll be talking more about those a little bit later. You've got the options to add individuals to the map, which we'll be talking about extensively, and then you have the options for jumping right back over into Clarity if you need them. A few other things about this before I show you how to work with the encampments. Right now we're looking at the map view, but I know some folks in the field prefer the satellite view. And so you have those options. This view can be helpful if you're drawing out an encampment boundary and you need to see actual landmarks. But otherwise, for the demo, I'm going to leave it in map view just because it's a little bit easier to look at. But no, you can easily switch between those there. One of my all-time favorite features is this geolocator. So I don't know if any of you have ever gotten lost in the field. When I first started homeless outreach, that was a common occurrence. And you can use this geolocator to help orient you on the map if you're drawing an encampment or adding a person. And I'll show you how this works. It's connected to the GPS signal on your device, and it's going to drop a pin where you are. So you can see it found me in my home, which is on the south side of town. But if I was working in the field in downtown, it would locate me there. And from there, I can draw my boundaries of my encampment if I'm within the encampment, or I can add a person where I've made contact with them. I'll stop that for now. We also have the home button here, which is going to reorient me if I need to, and that's going to be connected to the address that's associated with your agency. I've got zoom in and zoom out capabilities. If you're using this from a mobile device, it's pinch friendly, so I can drag in and out on my cell phone very easily. It's really responsive that way. And so those are the controls. I also have a heat map. I don't have as much data populated in this, so it's a little bit harder to see. But if you've got, once your map has been in use, you may use the heat map to identify pockets of concentration within your community. So all of those are available to you, and those are just our basic controls. Any questions so far? Just about the basic controls.
Any questions?
Okay, not hearing any. Let's talk about some of our data filters. Now, our map is built out in real time, meaning that if you make changes in Clarity or within the map, those changes are going to be automatically reflected. But you do have the option to back up your view of the map up to 6 months ago. So let's say I was working in a homeless encampment 3 months ago. I don't see it on my map today, but I know it was there. I can back up my map and I can look at the historic representations. Maybe that encampment has been made inactive, and then I can go back into the history and take a look at it. I'll go ahead and back this up to today's view though, because I want to work in real time with you guys. We also have some data filters. So if I want to, I can only look at encampments. Let's say I'm not concerned about unsheltered individuals, or I can just look at unsheltered individuals if I want to see that view. So you can filter down your map. If you guys are using encampment teams, we have the option to create teams, and those teams can be either within a single agency, or you can have specialized teams that work across agencies. And then I have the option of filtering my map just to see those encampments that I am assigned to. So those are all options. And one of the things that I want you to keep in mind is whether or not you all would find value in having teams configured within Clarity Outreach. The last thing I want to show you here is one of my favorite features. It is the map layer feature. I've got a continuum of care boundary set up here. So let's say you're doing outreach out in the field, and you are on the border of your continuum of care, and you don't know if your agency services this encampment or if it's another one. You can turn on that map layer and you can quickly identify if that encampment is within your continuum of care or if it's within another. You can build your own map layers here. I've got ones that I've built out for the counties, and then a FEMA flood zone map is one that I like to use quite commonly. But all of these are here for you. Ways that I've seen communities use these are to import sheriff beats, so they know who or which authority to call if there's an issue. I've seen EMS territories, fire zones. I've seen fire hazard areas be used as map layers. There are just a lot of different options, and I'm sure your county has a GIS department that can help share those shape files and get them into the map. So that's a second point to be thinking about. What map layers would your community find beneficial for you, and what would you want available to you when you're working in the field?
Is there a possibility to get it split up, like by county? I mean, not by county, by zip code?
Yeah, you can easily import a zip code layer. Those zip code files are typically free on the web, or again, your GIS department would have them, and you can easily import that, and then you would see the layers. That would also enable you to do reporting by zip code.
Okay. And then my next question is, and not quite there yet, but will there be a way to divide Mecklenburg County up? And I'm gonna say, make sure I say this right. So if Ada Jenkins, we know that they're the best example because we already know their services. So they do North Mecklenburg, and so when referrals come to the community, we know who that point person is for that specific area. If Deb with Black Love, if her primary area was in Uptown Charlotte, we would, you know what I'm saying? It would be listed so that
you can create map layers for those.
That point of reference. for different positions in the, in the community.
Yeah.
There is a way
You
to.
absolutely can. You absolutely can. You can either hand draw those boundaries, you can create those boundaries in ArcGIS if you use that mapping tool to create quadrants. If you've got specific zones that your outreach teams coordinate, map layers is a great use of that. And then any staff person that's using the outreach module can quickly turn that on and see where that encampment lies within the territory so they know who to generate a referral to. Is that the use case that you're looking for?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great example of how you can use map layers. Any other questions about those? Okay, I want to dive into the encampment creation workflow. So let me reset my filters here. One of the things that I want you all to keep in mind is what information you want to collect on an encampment when you are representing them on the map. I'm starting to work with a lot of communities on very robust encampment assessments. These assessments help communities to understand the needs of the encampment. A lot of the assessments are built out surrounding the health, safety, environmental impact of encampments, and then the impact in the community, the ways in which they intersect with public property or private property, etc. Are you all currently using any kind of encampment assessments at this point in your community?
No.
No. Okay, well, the encampment screen I'm going to show you is a more robust assessment, but this could be scaled back and you could make it very simple. But each encampment that you create needs to have an encampment form completed. So let me show you the full workflow for creating the encampment. The first thing I'm going to do is locate where I want my encampment. And I'm going to say this encampment is going to be just off the Arlington Expressway here. So I've located my area and I'm going to go ahead and select this polygon tool and I'll start drawing. You can get very, very detailed in the encampment boundaries, but for today, I'm just going to make a rough shape here. Once I close that, I'm going to get the green grid saying, and the green grid means I'm free to create the encampment, but it's not overlapping with any other encampments. If I go and create an encampment and it turns red, that means I've intersected another encampment and I need to either revise my boundaries or expand the boundaries of the other encampment so that they encapsulate each other. I'll go ahead and create that. The first part of my form is very simple. You're going to give the encampment a name. I like to use standard naming conventions. That's another decision point that I want you all to think about. How do you want to coordinate your encampments within the map itself? Sometimes I work with communities and they want to use key terms, like if this is an active encampment, they would give it that. If it's pending assessment, they would note that in the title. But for today's purposes, we'll just call this Arlington Expressway encampment. So basic name. The encampment status, I've got this set to pending review. If you've got an assessment team that's going to be responsible for assessing that, you could leave it at pending review. But if all of you are completing your encampment screens, then you could leave as is. I'll go ahead and mark this to active, and you'll see that's when my encampment assessment populates. So this assessment is a sample assessment that's built out on some general conditions of the encampment, the health risk factors of the encampment, and the safety risk factors of the encampment, as well as the environmental. And I'll walk through this quickly. I'm not going to go into each question in detail, but I just want to give you an idea of how you could build out an assessment if that's of interest to you. We'll give this a start date of today. Please describe the site, including surrounding areas and types of structures. So we'll say there are 3 tents and an RV. Number of individuals, we'll say that there's 7. Please describe the best access point for emergency services in the event of an emergency, which is helpful because our encampments don't have addresses oftentimes. And so we would say, a basic description of the road here. Indications that children may be present, we'll select no. Are there indications that one or more residents may be pregnant? We'll select no. Did you observe a pet or other animals in the encampment, or indications that a pet or animal may be present? For this one, you have the option of no animals observed or reported, animal observed, or animal reported but not observed. If I choose animal observed, it's going to give me a secondary question of, does the animal present any risk to the safety of encampment visitors? I have the options of no, yes, or undetermined. If I select yes, it's going to tell me, please create an outreach alert notifying personnel of potential safety risk. And that alert is going to notify all personnel that are working in that area that there is, perhaps a dangerous dog, and to use caution when entering that encampment. So you can configure these warnings any way that you want, and your system administrators can help set those up if you've got preferences that you want to build warnings around. Moving on to health indicators, are there indications that occupants may have accommodations for health or mental health? I can select yes or no. Indications that the occupant is potential health or safety risk to themselves or others. If I select yes, no other action. Number of bathrooms or makeshift facility observed, we'll say they have one bathroom. Number of hand washing facilities, we'll say they have one of those. Do they have access to potable water? No. And then we move into the safety section. Indications of criminal activity or violence. These questions are based on no observation, low levels, meaning no action is required, moderate level, meaning mitigation is needed, or high levels, meaning that there's risk to residents or staff. If I choose risk to residents, you'll see that I get an additional notification that says, please generate an encampment alert to notify outreach personnel of potential risk. So that's another example of a warning. I'm going to go ahead and move this back to moderate no, and you see that disappears. Indications of drug use, dealing, or production, we'll say none observed. Excessive fire hazards, including open fire pit or excessive flammable debris, we'll say low levels. Indications of active flood risk, such as close proximity to a waterway, excessive standing water, we'll say yes, because this is right on our St. Johns River. Did you observe the presence of any weapons in the encampment? If I say yes, you get another indication to generate an alert and an additional note box if needed. We'll say no here. And then the last subset of questions for this assessment are the environmental risks. Please indicate the level of garbage or debris within the encampment. We can say maybe moderate levels. Are there indications of any environmental health risks, such as mice, rats, or mosquitoes? We'll say probably moderate, because it, again, proximity to water. Are there any indications of human or animal waste? We'll say low levels. Does the encampment interfere with pedestrian safety? We'll say no. And the last date of service, which would be today. Then I can save that encampment, and you can see my encampment has been created. There are the boundaries, and here's the marker showing that there's 0 clients within this encampment. But I have successfully completed my encampment assessment, and I've created the assessment. And I want to pause here because I know I just threw a lot of information at you. Any questions that you all have about the encampment form and how it can be used to meet your needs?
So I'm just curious. I mean, I see some of the questions that have been built out, like how would emergency services access this? But have any of the communities that you have coached used things like when there's like flood risk or like excessive trash, like what are they what do they find useful? Like what are the outputs collecting that information?
Yeah, so I've been working with the community to build out mitigation response that's connected to this encampment assessment. We've got a reporting tool that can pull all of this information, and that reporting tool is going to be monitored on a regular basis by their encampment management entity. And when they see we've got high levels of trash at this encampment, they know to dispatch public sanitation there to collect the garbage. And so the information that you're pulling from all of these assessments can help you better understand the public services that you need for mitigation. If there needs to be some encampment resolution or abatement because of safety conditions, it can help you assess that. That's one of the reasons that you're seeing communities turn to these more robust assessments so that they can get a better understanding of the encampment needs. Does that answer your question?
Oh, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I definitely recommend that, if your community doesn't already, having some sort of encampment task force or at least someone at the COC that is monitoring your encampment assessments or conditions as a whole is very helpful to organizing a successful response.
We got one more question, Marty.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to know, I understand the encampment piece, but what about areas that have like congregate pieces? Is that can be put on here? And
Yes.
that, and we have like, if we we have a person we know that's on this bench, we can find this person on this bench, they sleep there, they might move around, or they might stay there all day. Is there a way to do that?
Yes, that is all coming. So one of the things that I encourage communities to put in place before they ever start with their outreach module is to create a community definition of what is and isn't an encampment. Do you all have a community definition in place for an encampment?
Yes, we do.
Oh my goodness, gold star to Mecklenburg. You're the first customer that I've ever worked with that has an encampment definition in place. You have no idea how elated I am. That is awesome. So that's great to know. Does it include individuals that are like, can a single individual be an encampment, or do you have to have two or more within your definition?
I believe we said yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that's just one thing to note. If a individual does not meet your community criteria for an encampment, you can still reflect them as an individual. So let me show you that workflow now. So let's say, for example, there looks like this may be a little bit of a park here. We're just going to pretend that this is a bench, and I'm going to go ahead and find my client, and I'll use Sal Nash. So I will search for my client. You can search using first, last, date of birth, or social, and pull that up. I've selected Sal, and I'll go ahead and add Sal to my map. I now have the option to geolocate Sal where I want to. So I'm going to give Sal, sorry. I didn't mean to step out of that so quickly. Let's go ahead and confirm, and I am going to drop Sal right here on this bench. And so now you can see Sal has been added to the bench. And the really cool thing about this is if I am in Sal's HMIS profile, so now I'm back in Clarity as a whole, I go to Sal's location tab and I can see that an individual location has been added for Sal, and I can see that on my map here. If you have those map layers configured that somebody was talking about, I can easily turn those on and figure out what outreach zone is Sal in. So those map layers are still going to work from here. I can also view all of my encampments from the location tab. So that is going to be available both here and within Clarity Outreach itself. So that, does that address the need that you have?
Yes, Marty. There are two questions. Question for me or for Marty?
No, for Marty.
Okay, I have two questions for you, Marty.
Okay.
Oh, no, I was doing it.
Yeah, I had a question.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So how do we generate the encampment alert from that drop down when we're actually creating the encampment?
Yeah. Sure. Let me show you that now. So we've done the workflow to create the encampment. The next step of the workflow is to add individuals to the encampment. So I'll go ahead and we'll just add one person together, and then I'll show you the notes and alerts. So I get ready to add my person. I again can search by any number of profile criteria, but let's just search here. And you see these indicators here. This means this person is associated with another encampment. But let's say I want to add this Johnny Johnsky here to my encampment. Now this encampment counter has been updated, and I would go through the process and adding all of the individuals that I have identified within that encampment. And you, sir, asked about notes and alerts. So that's the next step in the workflow. To add a note or alert, you would click here, and you have the option between an alert and a note. I always encourage communities to create criteria surrounding what is an alert and what is a note. The conditions that I like to recommend is that alerts are used for any kind of situation that warrants urgency or a response. This could be a medical condition, environmental factors, a threat of violence, etc. Anything that you need to warn or notify other personnel about so that they remain safe in the field should be made a note, or should be made as an alert. Notes are things like your case notes would be for a client that could be used to document services delivered or requests from residents, etc. But things that are non-urgent should be documented as a note. Let me show you this step to create it. The first thing I did was click the icon there, and then I choose between alerts or notes. Let's call this threat of violence. I have to give an alert an expiration date, and I always encourage communities to set some standard thresholds. I like to use 30 days. So this would make that extend out to August 6th. And then I have the option to document my note. These are rich text, meaning that I can hyperlink here. I can create notes, charts. I can add an attachment if I need to take a picture and upload it to the record. Let's say it's regarding flood levels and I want to take a picture of today's flood levels. I could take a picture and upload it and attach it to the note so that I can monitor that sort of thing. So I'm just going to leave a test note here. And I'm not going to add an attachment today, but now you can see I've generated my note. This alert is going to stay within this encampment profile, but it's also going to trigger this higher level alert. So when I, as an outreach worker, log in, I'll see that alert in my navigation pane, and I can see there's been one new alert at Arlington Expressway. I open it up and it's going to drive me to that alert, which I can see, and I can also edit if you have the proper permissions. And the same is done with the notes. If that had been a note, it would be stored there within the history. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, thank you.
Can I ask
Allison?
Yes, so for an individual, Jessica finds whoever that your client was on that particular spot on this day, and then a week later, my team encounters them in a different spot, and we map. Do they move, or are they now on the map twice?
Nope, they move. So it's dynamic representation. It updates. I'm going to show you in clarity the ways in which we can update it. But an individual only has one representation on the map at a time, and it's always their most recent location update.
Is there a way to make it where you can see all the spots that they've been? Because that might help an
Yes. Yes, you can see all the spots that they've been in a client's location tab within their Clarity profile. So this client only has one location update, but I've got some, I think this is a client that has more involvement. So you can see in this client's profile all of their encampment history and the individual locations that they've been. The active location is always going to be the one that's on top, and it'll have a star.
And one, I know, we already tried this, but is it possible to zoom in anymore? I can't see anything.
Up here.
See,
Shamika, is that better?
To me, is it better, Allison?
no.
Am I on a big screen or am I just on a screen?
You are on two huge televisions. Allison Winston has been difficult today. Can you?
I need it on my glasses.
Allison, come up here.
Okay.
I am having a hard
I
time.
can switch with you.
Yeah, it's good, Marty.
Okay.
And you have one.
One more question? Okay.
It was me. Okay, cool. So the alerts that you're talking about, are they attached to the geographic area or are they attached to the person? Is there a way to differentiate? Because I'm just wondering, like, if I encountered a client who maybe made like a verbal threat against me, as that moves, will that alert move versus like an environmental threat? Like, oh, be careful really steep kind of incline or something?
That's a great question. So the alerts that I demoed for you are going to be encampment level notes. Those stay with the encampment. However, we also have alerts at the client profile level. So if there's a threat of violence from a client, I absolutely encourage you to generate an alert on that client profile. And you do that by going into the notes section and then adding a public alert. So we could call this one threat of violence. You can also give it the expiration date, which will give it the same one. And then we'll just make a test note here. And now you can see that this client profile has a public alert on it. I can click into that alert and see that it's a threat of violence.
One more question.
So
Yep.
like, for many of us, there's certain people we know that's that personality type. Is there a way to use my word again? Perpetuitize that person? Like meaning like just proceed with caution, this person, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely encounter those in the field as well. And you could document that as a note. You could document it in the encampment notes if that resident is regularly present. You can document it there. A lot of encampments that we've been working with have a hierarchy. And so there's a leader, there's a person in charge. They like to document that in the notes. So if a new team comes upon the encampment, they know who they need to speak to and work with, and they know what to watch out for.
Thank you.
Okay. That's what I wanted to show you on the map side. Now I want to show you some of the integrations that we have built in and the ways in which your Clarity HMIS system works with the map. So we're going to switch back into Clarity, and I can do that by selecting clients here. Let me close out these other windows. And I want to show you some workflows of how we can add clients to a map and some recommended ways. I'm going to be working with Sal Nash, and let's say Sal is a brand new outreach client. He's been recently identified in the community. The first thing that I'm going to do is enroll Sal into my outreach program. So I would go ahead and select enroll, and I have got the minimum COC standard here. So I'm going to go ahead and complete my intake, and we'll say that Sal reports he's been homeless for 1 year or longer, and we'll say this started in 2022. Number of times homeless, we'll say 4 or more, and total number of times more than 12 months. So it's evident that Sal is chronically homeless. All right, here's a test for my outreach workers. What is the next step in the workflow once you've completed your enrollment?
ROI. No,
Well,
already done.
We already did that.
yeah, the ROI should have already been done. This is a HUD required component that has to be completed immediately after enrollment and every time you interact with a client. Does anyone know?
The living situations.
Yes. Are you guys completing your current living situation on a regular basis?
Oh yeah, every time.
I love to hear it. I love to hear it. That's so exciting. I've got a lot of communities that we're working with that are not compliant with the CLS, but I'm glad to hear that you guys are doing it regularly. I like to add a custom current living situation that collects geolocation to my assessment so that every time I interact with the client, their location is getting updated. I'm going to show you that workflow now. So I'll start the current living situation, and I'll go ahead and add it for Sal Nash. And let's say Sal reports that he's staying in a place not meant for human habitation. And I'll go ahead and add his location. I have 2 options. I can add Sal as an individual on the map. So let's say Sal is residing in the Walmart parking lot. I can search by nearby Walmarts if I want to, or I could search a direct address. I could also use my current location and drop a pin. So I could do that, but I can also add Sal to an encampment directly from the location tab. So let's say that Sal is staying in that Arlington Expressway encampment that we were just working in. I'll go ahead and do that there, or I have the option to turn on my encampments view. Let's say Sal, is new to town. He knows he's staying in encampment, but he doesn't know exactly where. I can turn on my encampment view and I can find the one that he's staying at and add him. Okay, so now I'll save and close, and two things have happened. I've completed the current living situation and I've updated Sal's location. I can now go to the location tab and I can see the first placement that we made for Sal, which was that bench that I demoed. But now I can see that through my current living situation assessment, Sal's location has been updated to the Arlington Expressway encampment. And when I open up that encampment, it's going to drive me to the encampment screen where I see that Sal Nash has been added. Okay, so that's one way that we can collect and update location data. We can also use services to update location data. I can add location data directly through the location tab, which I showed you, or through field interaction. So there's lots of different ways to collect location, both within Clarity and within the outreach module. And I think this is very helpful because you may have providers that aren't conducting outreach, but can help make sure that client location is always as accurate as possible. Any questions about how you can tie that into the current living situation? I think I see a hand. You're just off screen. It's just an arm. Is that a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you come across an encampment, like, are you able to update it? So like, let's say, hey, that encampment that you just added somebody to, you know, it shows record that there were 3 different tents and 6 people, but you come across it and none of those tents are there and it's only like 2 people. Can you remove the 4 people from that encampment to make that location more accurate?
Yeah, so there's a few different things that you can do. One, I want to start, if an encampment is no longer there, I can inactivate that encampment and just remove it entirely. So that's one option. I can also remove individuals from the encampment. We are rolling out new functionality for outreach that allows you to issue an end date to a location. So then I can manually say that, you know, Johnny has left this encampment and I can end his participation. That is supposed to be coming out, I believe, within our next sprint, but I can follow up with more information about that. And then the third option I can do, aside from those, is I can edit my boundaries. So let's say I'm making a field visit this week and I see this encampment has grown. I can choose to remark the boundaries to expand them, or if it's shrunk, I can make it smaller. But one of the things that I always encourage communities to do is to reassess encampments at a designated interval so that your encampment data always stays up to date. Does that address your question?
It does, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Custom assessment?
Is that another question, Tamika? I wasn't.
Was that, did you say that was a custom assessment?
I completed a custom current living situation assessment. So all I did was add a geolocation field to the current living situation assessment for when individuals respond, they're living in a place not meant for human habitation. So then the only people that are going to be reflected on my outreach map are those that are unsheltered. Okay, there are a few other really cool things that I want to show you, and the one I'm going to show you next is one of my favorites. So let's go back to Sal Nash's profile, and let's say Sal has now been referred and serviced by another program, and he's been housed. So if I go into this street outreach enrollment and I exit Sal, let's say Sal went through a rapid rehousing program and he is now housed. So let's go back to our profile for Sal. Back in outreach and refresh this. You'll see that Sal now has a housed badge. And that housed badge is very helpful because, as you all know, oftentimes encampments are social settings for our clients. They may continue to return to an encampment because it's their friends are there, it's their community. And this is an indicator to let everyone know that Sal does have housing, even though he's currently been located within the encampment. Sal will remain in the encampment until he meets an expiration threshold, and that threshold you all can designate. A lot of our communities use 90 days. And so this means that Sal would stay here in this placement until you either manually expire his location or he reaches that 90-day threshold. And at that point, he would no longer be visible. We have these badges built out for individuals that are housed, individuals that are sheltered, which means they're enrolled in any kind of night-by-night emergency shelter, your standard entry-exit emergency shelter, or transitional housing. And we also have a deceased badge that happens anytime anyone has entered a exit destination of deceased. And if that one seems odd to you, I've actually had a situation where we exited a client to deceased, and then lo and behold, we resurfaced. Okay. Any questions about those integrations? Or I see one hand raised, actually.
No, she answered my question. That was not a question.
Okay, that was her question.
Okay, great. All right. Let me turn back to my presentation. Anything else I can show you in clarity with the module before we turn back to our presentation?
Doesn't look like it.
All right. I just briefly want to get you all thinking about the ways in which you all want to collect geolocation, because in Clarity Human Services, there are just a ton of ways to collect someone's current location. We've got individual data that can be collected through the location tab, through those custom geolocation fields, which I modeled through the CLS. You can collect encampment data, you can collect mailing address. I mean, the options are really endless. What you all need to think about is how that information should get reflected on your map. The question that I often start by asking communities when I work with them is, what do you want your map to reflect? If you only want your map to reflect individuals that are unsheltered, then you need to be very strategic in the way that you collect that location in Clarity, and then we'll adjust those location filters so that only that information gets displayed. I want you all to do some thinking about how location should be collected. I demoed for you the location tab. We talked about those geolocation fields that can be added. If you've got common assessments, you can choose to add those there. A lot of communities are interested in capturing it through their current, through their coordinated entry assessment, which is an option. Those can be added to the profile field or any screen within Clarity. You also have the option to collect location through services. If you want to use specific outreach services, you can have that configured to display, and then those field interactions, which are just actions taken while you're on the map. So those are all options for you. Any questions about those options?
One question, Marty.
I'm sorry. This was more about the previous portion of your slideshow, but is there a way to filter and show, like, if we wanted to see all of the youth that are represented in encampments, is there a way to filter and only show, like, if you could filter by veteran status, or is there a way to filter by youth or under 25? Like different demographics. Yeah, I guess different demographics. Sure.
Yeah, so there isn't a way to filter the map. What you can do is build out reporting tools, which I'll talk about next, that can help you identify subpopulations that are, unsheltered and represented on your map. We just released a new Looker model, and I know that you all won't have access to it, but your system admins could build out reports to be sent to you all on whatever interval you want. So let's say you're a youth-focused outreach team and you want a daily report of any youth that are reporting as unsheltered within this map layer or within, your whole COC, whatever jurisdiction you specify. And your system administrator can set that up so that report is sent to you on a daily basis. Would that meet the need?
I mean, it sounds like it. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, capturing subpopulations is helpful in certain, like, if we're doing outreach with our youth organization or with our veteran services folks or other.
Yeah. Great. That was about, we've already briefly touched on reporting, but again, we recently released a brand new Looker model. It's super exciting. the thing that I like to encourage communities to do is to build out a very robust encampment roster. And that's going to give you a detailed report of what residents you have in each encampment. You can pull in demographic information. You can pull in information about services or other enrollments that they receive. I can give Shamika information about some of the ways in which communities are using these reporting tools. And then we hope to have a canned report available for outreach in the near future that you all as end users would be able to run. Any other questions? Okay.
Now's the time to ask, because she knows.
Okay, a reporting question.
Mhm.
In Well Sky, if you didn't have an art license, your reporting is very limited. Is it the same?
Yeah, so you have your system administrators have the capability to build out those custom reports, but as I mentioned, they can choose to send them to you so that you can still receive those reports, but you do need a license in order to access certain levels of reports.
I noticed, like, I guess when you had the breakdown screen, you had individuals and encampment, and I had mentioned about the congregation piece. The reason why I say that would be important because, and lots of times when we're looking for our clients and they go to the encampment and they're not there, there are locations that you can typically find them, which especially, that's the wall, that might be the herb, that might be by the library on Beatty's 4. They might not necessarily sleep there, but those are known locations where unsheltered folks hang out. Like, to have those options, that option as well, I think would be helpful to the teams.
Yeah, and you can always add notes to a client's location history. So let me show you that. So as I mentioned, the most current location is always going to be at the top. But let's say I want to note, well, let me make a new location update and I'll show you that. Let's say I want to say this individual has a temporary place that they are, and it's always the public library. And so I could add the address, and I think I can search library here. We'll go ahead and just add a library. I can give it a location date. Let's say, I'll give it this date. This is not the active location, but I can make a note here saying client visits library Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 12 to 2 or whatever. And then I can save those changes, and that note is going to be within their location history along with it. So, oops. Any other questions? Okay.
One more.
Oh, yep.
It comes to me a little later. If someone is in a temporary place, like incarcerated, or maybe they go to they're not quite in a patient program, like how does that change the view on the map or their location? Like how does that change?
So I think you have a few options. When we release the manual expire functionality, you could choose to manually expire them from their current location. You could add a location update of jail in their location tab, because we can customize the addresses and the address types that are available in location. So you could create an address type of jail to notate when a client is in jail. I think those would be the two best workflows: either temporary manually expire them from their location, or add a location note of jail. Or hospital is another one that is a common occurrence. Let's say somebody is in the hospital for surgery and they're going to be there for at least 2 weeks. You could add a temporary location update of hospital.
But you're exiting them from the street outreach project to wherever they're going. And then when they come back, of course, you can do that re-entry. But you should be exiting out to whatever location they're going to.
After 2 weeks?
When they go there.
When they go there.
You can only do it if you know that they've gone there. If they've been in out 2 weeks, then it makes never mind. But if you know they're in the hospital, you exit them to the hospital and then open them back up when you interact with them again.
Same with jail.
Mhm. Go ahead, Papa.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that just made me think like maybe a jailed badge would be a jailed or inpatient badge would be helpful to add along with your sheltered and housed and deceased. So it's an interesting thought. Okay, before I go, there is one thing that I want to point out to you, and that is just the exhaustive amount of resources that we have available. Last year, I put together this outreach toolkit, which is a 101 for all of our customers of how to build good processes and infrastructure for Clarity Outreach from the ground up. So it walks you through each of this step. There are loads of resources that are built within it. But it can help you think strategically about how you want to incorporate outreach and how it can best be used to meet your outcomes. So I can send Shamika the link to this, and it is on our website. But I encourage you guys to take a look at the checklist and some of the resources that are built into it. I also have sample encampment surveys if that's something that you want to see a sample of encampment assessment. But otherwise, your Clarity Outreach model will come with our basic encampment screen, which just collects the encampment date, encampment details, and a description. So right now it's fairly basic, but I hope that you guys have found this beneficial. If you've got any follow-up questions, you can pass them on to me through Shamika. And otherwise, I very much enjoy getting the opportunity to spend the morning with you all and review the tool together. Appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you, Marty.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your training. We are so excited to have your community with us. I didn't mention this before, but before coming to Bitfocus, I was actually in Northwest North Carolina and the continuum of care there. And I was a part of the Raleigh onboarding. So I am super excited to have 2 North Carolina communities represented within the Bitfocus family. Can't extend, a warm enough welcome to you guys. We're just elated to have you guys with us. So let us know if there's anything we can do for to assist you guys. And otherwise, Shamika, I will talk to you tomorrow.
All righty. See you tomorrow.
All right, bye y'all.